Okay, what we'll do today, in the first hour, because we have a longer text, so we need a bit more time, I think, is we will do the third and last of these text comprehension exercises, tests. You've done 2 before. I have the marked copies there. I will give them back to you at the end of today's class. This is the last one. So we'll follow the same procedure that we did last time. You will read the text, then we'll discuss it a little bit together, and then you will write short answers to these questions according to your ideas and hopefully the ideas that we've had in the discussion. This is a longer text, it's kind of a full page, so in order not to squash you up at the end, I thought we may as well do it now, and then obviously if we run over in time, if someone's still writing when break starts, then we can have a shorter second class. So a few words before you begin. This is a fairly unknown book. We have a copy in the library, I think, now, but a fairly unknown book called the Uranta book, or sometimes called the Uranta Papers. Now, no one's exactly sure where all this stuff came from. There's a lot of it, thick book. The story goes that in the I think it was kind of 20s or 30s in Chicago in the US, there was some guy who was sleeping very deeply, and his wife was concerned she couldn't wake him up or something, and she got some psychologist or psychiatrist involved, and then he started sort of saying things as well at some point. And then later on some texts appeared and a group of people became involved. And finally in 1955 these papers and texts ended up as this book. And I'm not sure, and I don't think anyone really knows exactly how it all came about, whether it was this sleeping man that kind of spoke these things and then they got written down, or whether it was these psychologists, psychiatrists and other people that kind of created it and so on, which obviously seems more likely. I think they've analysed the text in terms of the vocabulary and the grammar, and they suggest that there's more than one author and so on. But those people that believe this as a kind of religious holy book would say that it was a revelation probably by this sleeping guy, and that it came ultimately from these kind of universal beings, angel type things in the sky or something like that. Okay, so read this and it'll maybe take you about 15 minutes, something like that, I don't know. Read it slowly. Obviously you can ask me if there are any words you don't understand. Then we'll have a discussion of it, and then we've got 2 questions here. To what extent can we describe the religious ideas in the Uranta book as monotheistic? And what is the relationship of the Uranta book to other world religions and to modern science? So one question is about the idea of one God. The other one is saying, have you heard some of these ideas before in other religions, ones we're reading about, or it could be your Islam or Christianity, and what's its connection to science rather than religion as well? Okay. So as you're reading it, think about those things. Please, any words you don't understand, okay, ask me and I'll put them on the board, because it probably means that other people won't understand them as well. Okay, so we'll make a start. We'll finish maybe in about 50 minutes, sometime after 11 o'clock, and then we'll have 10-15-minute discussion, and then we'll run over the break, but you've got time to write your answers and so on to this. Okay, fire away. Right, so what is this then? Uranta book, published 1955, maybe coming into existence through the strange revelations for a few decades earlier, or maybe composed by a number of people in and around Chicago during that time, more than likely the second option. How would you describe this? What kind of text, what kind of book is this in your opinion? Is it religious? Is it scientific? Is it science fiction? What do you think it is?
It's kind of a mixture between religion and science fiction.
Right. What are the science fiction bits then?
God created this planet, and He waits for the the ideal conditions. Then He dispatch life to there, and He watches the creations evolve in time. So unlike other religion, it's a sports evolution. And I don't know, it's just...
Do you think it's true? Anyone think this is true? Anyone support this? Let's ask that question. Think, oh, that's quite sensible. Okay. It refers more than once to sons of God and the paradise sons. Now, what is that referring to, but how is it different? By the sons of God, where the universe is made, and on those worlds where a paradise son has lived, a bestowal life, what is being referred to by this idea of there's more than one paradise son, do you think? All right, can we be a bit more specific here? The concept of sons of God, plural, who otherwise is referred to as Son of God in other religions? Jesus Christ, okay. So the concept of God having a son, which as we've said in Christianity is not literal, but the phrase is there, seems to have an echo here, except we have sons of God. Why do we have more than one son? In Christianity, God comes to earth once as Jesus Christ. Here we have sons of God, and it says paradise sons, presumably referring to the same people. What's the reason for having more than one, do you think?
I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but I guess humans evolve, and right now we are not the final step of the final step of the evolution, and when we have completed our evolution, we will be that paradise son, I guess, superior being.
Well, no, paradise son comes from outside, separate from humans, if I understand. The sons of God or paradise sons, they come from outside to help humans and so on. But my question is, why is there more than one? In Christianity, we have Jesus Christ as Son of God. Here we've got sons of God. Yeah, okay. They're making it very clear that they are thinking of the universe, not just of Earth, the world, okay? And that they also have life which is evolving, perhaps in similar but also in different ways. So a son of God, a paradise son, will be sent to those other worlds as well. So presumably the one that we have will be Jesus. Doesn't say that here in the bit we've got. Whereas on other planets, there are other sons of God. Okay, that's perhaps what we've got. Towards the bottom, it says, when the highest possible level of evolutionary life has been attained, when primitive man has ascended, gone up, as far as possible in the biologic scale, a material son and daughter always appear on the planet. Okay, material son and daughter. Now, who do you think this is referring to? Who is this echoing, perhaps, in the religions that we know about already? Son and daughter. I suspect, anyway, I could be wrong, but I have an idea. Now, son and daughter, so you've got man and woman, okay? Son and daughter. Adam and Eve, maybe it's referring to, okay? Adam and Hava in the Arabic Turkish form. Okay, now they're not, well, I suppose they are. Since they were created by God, then they are kind of coming from one source. So you could call them son and daughter, but obviously they're husband and wife in traditional Abrahamic religions. But I think this is a reference to those. Again, it's another stage. And then afterwards it refers to post-Adamic men. Okay, so after Adam has come, the next stage, which is also listed as stage 3, okay, humans kind of evolve or develop more, and so on. What can we see about God here? What aspects of God are mentioned in this text? Right, okay, and yes, Yaz, you've started on that, the same things, okay. So creator, controller, it says also, Seda was asking, infinite, okay, going on forever, okay, which is very important. Eternal, it says later on as well. Universal Father, they stress this, okay. It's not the worldly Father or something, it's the universal Father, the Father of the universe, which here means all the other solar systems and planets and life on those, okay. And on different planets in your local system of inhabited worlds, he is variously, differently known as the Father of Fathers, the Paradise Father, the Havona Father, and the Spirit Father. So again, God will get kind of different names or different titles on different worlds. People will give him a different name or title in a sense, but his features are still the same. So we can see some connections with religion, particularly probably with the Christian tradition of because we've got Jesus Christ concept, plus we've got things from the Old Testament here, Adam and Eve and so on. So obviously whoever wrote this was more familiar with Christianity than with other world religions. The science stuff, well, Erdem mentioned evolution. What other science things can we see in here? We've mentioned it more than once.
Could be the ages.
Right. Can you explain that more?
For the humankind.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Yes.
7 ages.
Right.
As the example of the before the period of the modern science. For example, here it says planetary trains.
So there are stages. It's a kind of evolutionary stages and so on. It's interesting that the number is 7.
There are 7
Planets.
Well, there are 7 days in the week, and
You also say there are 7, in the sky, God's, I don't know, resides in the 7th.
right, yeah. But more directly, in the Old Testament, I don't know if you've got this in Islam or not, you'll have to tell me, but in the Old Testament, when it talks about creation, okay, God created the world in the week, rested on the 7th day, and so on. So again, they're taking the concept of 7 here, and here it is 7 stages. Someone's deliberately kind of taking the figure 7, trying to make a parallel with it there, in a sense, perhaps you could say. I mean, for me, the scientific stuff is partly the evolutionary idea, but also this idea of the universe and of the possibility of life on other planets, something which, 2,000 years ago, people were not considering other planets in the universe and so on. It wasn't in their sort of world picture, so they couldn't create a religion that focused on the idea of other planets. But in the 19th century and the 20th century, people began more and more to think about these issues of solar systems beyond our own and possibility of life, and that's when what we would call science fiction really sort of starts to get going in the early 20th century. So that's will have fed into this, perhaps, okay, in its own kind of strange way. Okay, let's, you can now start, those of you who haven't started already, can start. Okay, yeah, go on.
What does the text suggest that in what era is the human evolution here? There are 7 steps.
Yeah, I suspect we must be maybe the post-bestowal sun man. I think that's when the paradise sons, okay, because it talks about the revelations of the bestowals of the paradise sons, okay, on those worlds where a paradise son has lived a bestowal life, and obviously Jesus Christ is the bestowal, the paradise son for earth. So probably we are like number 5 stage, I suspect. Okay. Okay, so have a go at answering the 2 questions there. And again, if you have any questions about words or anything, you can put your hand up and let me know. I noticed yesterday that there was only one submission to turn it in for topic 2. And Erdem, you sent your essay as an attachment. I found that today. So I guess we can count that as 2. So that means that the rest of you will have to do topic 3 essay, okay, because obviously topic 2 is now passed. Did I get that? I got Asena's topic 1 essay, which she said didn't receive. I will check. Can you send me an email to remind if you sent it? Okay. I definitely got Erdem's, but I'm not sure about the other. You submitted to turn it. Well, then yours is the one then. Okay. I haven't printed it yet, but you were the only one in that case then. But I'll check. Okay, in case. Okay. What we'll do now is we'll finish talking about the Baha'i religion, and then for a few minutes at the end, I'll give you back some of the work you've done so far, the essays I've marked for topic 1, and some of the tests and so on, so you can see how you're doing and so on, and we may finish a little bit early. Let's remind ourselves about the Baha'i faith. Where did it begin? Which country? Iran. Okay. You sound like American there. Iran. Did you say Iran? Or?
No, I said Iran, but I wasn't aware that there was a British and American difference.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, they say Iranians and things like that, Iran, but, okay, yeah, anyway, pronunciation aside. Beginning in the 19th century, during the, well, you could say 1840s, 1850s in Iran, and that means we see in many of their ideas and practices, we can see the influence of Islam, and especially Shia Islam, as obviously practiced in Iran at that time.
Their religious activities, we just look at the historical background.
Yeah, we're going to come to that. I'm just revising what we did. We're going to come to that in a minute. So we'll see some of their ideas in a few minutes. Okay, I'm just their main prophet, their main founder is Baha'u'llah. Okay, and the Baha bit, as we said, means glory in Arabic. Apologies for any bad pronunciation. And again, yes, the historical background. There is a kind of pre-prophet. They consider him to be a prophet. This guy called the Bab, okay, who said someone else would follow him, and one of his own followers, Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri, later on announced that he was the one that was following the Bab, and he set up the Baha'i religion. So it's kind of grown out of the Babi religion, but there are some differences as well. After him, his son, Abdul Baha, became the leader of the Baha'i religion and began to spread these ideas to other parts of the world. And then after him, after Abdul Baha, his grandson, Shoghi Effendi, was the leader, and he was the one. After him, when he died, they set up this Universal House of Justice. It's an elected assembly which represents and presents their main ideas and main decisions and so forth. They also have, I should add, in some places, depending on how strong they are, they have either local assemblies, groupings of people locally who discuss things and make decisions and so on. And even in some countries, they have national assemblies, okay? So you kind of have the Universal House, then you have the national ones, and then you have the local ones. There's a kind of vague hierarchy about that, okay? And obviously it depends on how strong the religion is in a particular area or something like that. And it's the Universal House of Justice which is now seen, with the help of God, obviously, as being the sort of main authority, the main power and decision-making body in their religion. Okay, any questions? Anything not clear from last time? Something I keep kicking down here, I don't know what it is. Okay, let's carry on then, go to the next screen and look at their scriptures, or as we call them, holy books, but they don't really have one or two kind of clear books which we can then say this is the holy book for that religion. They don't have something which we can say the Bible or the Quran, which they can focus on, or even the Book of Mormon or whatever. They have a number of different writings by obviously the Bab and Baha'u'llah, and then his successors as well. So it's more of a mixture of different writings. So scriptures there rather than holy books is what I've put. So yes, no single holy book, no single book which we can say reflects their main ideas. But they have a number of important books, particularly by Baha'u'llah. Two things that are important by him. Firstly, a book called Kitab-i-Aqdas, which of course is a Persian grammatical construction, okay, the izavet there. And, a lot of their early stuff was written in Farsi, was written in Persian, and then was translated into English. Though I think at least when you get to Shoghi Effendi later on, he was writing mostly in English. So the Kitab-i-Aqdas, which is especially, I think, to do with their laws. I think this sets out a lot of their behaviors and rules and things like this. Okay, and it means the most holy book. He also wrote the Kitab-i-Ikan, which is the book of certitude, certainty. Obviously, it ultimately means truth or something like that. Okay, and this, I think, is more theology. It's more to do with kind of religious ideas rather than rules and things like that. It's their basic beliefs about God and the universe and so on. So these are two important collections of his writing, compositions by Baha'u'llah, which he will believe was inspired or influenced by God. Okay, so there's an element of revelation here, and he had revelations from God and so on, though they are technically... If I'm correct, it's the Kitab-i-Aqdas is mainly law stuff and rules, and the Book of Certitude, Ikan. Sorry? Well, no, it's more to do with how you should behave, organizing your life as a Baha'i. Okay. So that's the Aqwan, and then Kitab-i-Ikan is the Book of Certitude, is the theological one. But I guess there are elements of both of these things of both in each of them. As well as their main founder, they accept amongst their writings the works by his successors. So Abdul Baha especially wrote letters. He often wrote letters to world leaders, to kings and presidents and things like that, where he was telling what he believed was the truth. And he also gave some lectures. So it's a collections of his lectures and letters put together, okay, are important for understanding his ideas, which I've got here, lots of things to press. And then lastly, Shoghi Effendi, the last of the guys, and he wrote a number of books. We won't give all the titles, I don't know them all. And I think he wrote a lot in English as well. His style of English, his slightly strange way of writing English, is kind of the standard for them as well. One of the problems with these things, in addition to the fact that there's no single book you can say this is where all the ideas and the truth are, so you've got different people and different writings, so it makes it more difficult to get a single picture and to say this is their belief and so on. Also the fact that a lot of the early writings especially were obviously in Persian, maybe Arabic as well. Baha'u'llah would have been writing in Persian, as I said. They are translated into English, obviously. And then most of the other translations have often been done from the English rather than from the Persian. Okay, I mean, maybe they're changing that now, but in the past especially, a lot of, if you wanted to read a Turkish version of the Book of Certitude or something, it would probably have been translated from English rather than from Persian. Maybe not Turkish, because people will know Persian here, but in other parts of the world or something. So that every time you translate something, of course, you may change it a little bit and so on. Maybe that's not the case now, but there is that danger, which makes it a bit difficult. They have this concept of the covenant. We've had that word, of course, in a slightly different way with Thomas Hobbes back at the start of this course. The covenant here is, again, the concept of agreement. People must agree. And basically what they're saying, if I understand correctly, is that anyone can interpret these books. What does to interpret mean? If I interpret something. Sorry? Not quite translate. Comment or whatever, yeah. I mean, if you take both of your answers, put them together, we might get it. It means you read something and then you say, I think it means this. Okay, so you take the reading, whichever language is, and you say, no, I think it means this or that or whatever. So you give your comment, you give your interpretation of it or whatever, which is what we all do when we read something. So any Baha'i can interpret these books and these ideas, but they cannot claim that their idea is definitely the correct one. My interpretation of the Kitab-i Aqtas is correct and Erdem's interpretation is wrong. They can't do that. They can't impose their understanding and say it's definitely the correct one and yours is wrong. And if we reach a point where people are obviously disagreeing and saying, no, I think it says this and I think it means that, and this is an important disagreement, there's a problem, then they will have to perhaps ultimately go to the Universal House of Justice to have these things decided. Any big problems will be decided by the big boys at the top, okay, or maybe national assemblies or whatever can also help. But essentially, you cannot impose your interpretation. So they're trying to keep a certain unity because, you know, most religions break up into little groups. You have Catholics and Protestants and Greek Orthodox, and in Islam you have different versions of Islam as well. So it's to avoid that, they say you can't have this guy setting up a new form of Baha'ism and then Sibel coming up with another one, and then we end up with different groups. We're trying to keep unified. We try and decide and suggest which are the correct ones. I think that's what's going on. So we've got lots of writings. They have to be interpreted and understood. There's no single document. They were created over a period of over 100 years, of course. And then we work together with the Universal House of Justice, which I think is this building here, if there's any problems of interpretation or uncertainty, and so on. And so if you decide to do your essay looking at these people, go into their website, you will just be pointed to the writings of Baha'u'llah. It won't say this book or that book, okay? There'll be just a selection of ideas that they think are important, quotations and passages from these books and others to reflect their ideas set out by theme. Okay, let's look at some of their beliefs now, which is quite important, and then we'll look a little bit at their religious life and so on. As I said before, since their religion grew out of, especially the Shia form of Islam, quite a lot of what they believe is influenced by that. Particularly, there is a Sufi element as well mixed in, okay? Shia Sufi element mixed in, that if you know your Islamic thinking, you can spot that. In addition, the writers, Baha'u'llah himself, but others as well, were partly influenced by Western and what we might call modern ideas. So they have some things which are not part of traditional Sufi Islam or something, and they were influenced by their familiarity or meeting Western ideas and things like that to do with equality of the sexes, for example, and so on. Okay, so there's an influence of that on here. Plus it's something kind of new as well. So the Baha'i religion is a new form growing out of these. So we can see different influences going in. As we've seen with the others, okay, something doesn't appear from nowhere. They are influenced by ideas that came before. And we'll briefly look at some of their most important beliefs, starting with this one, which I've already described to us, but I'll go into it again and say it a bit more. Unity and relativity of religious truth. They suggest, or they point out, that all humans in the past, all human societies in the past and now, have tried to understand the truth about God, about life, the universe, and everything as we could describe it. Okay, people strive to want to understand that. Okay, that's the thing they want to understand. The problem is that God and the universe is perfect and infinite, okay, goes on forever, whereas human beings are obviously imperfect and finite. We have an end. So we are not the same. Okay, we are not equal. So it's impossible for something like us to understand something which is ultimately perfect and goes on forever and is beyond us. Like I said about my dog understanding my behavior or something like that, we've mentioned before, similar ideas elsewhere. So whatever we come up with at different times in the past, we cannot get the full truth. It's impossible for us to get the full truth in that sense because we are human beings. We're not gods or something like that. Okay. So absolute truth, absolute understanding is impossible. But all religions in the past have had relative truth. They've all had some truth. Okay. They've all had part of the truth. And it's the truth which is relevant to their time. So some truth. Okay. So God has revealed truth through various prophets. We'll come to those in a moment. Okay. And it's some part of the truth that people in the past can understand. And it's truth which is related to a particular context. So 2,000 years ago, God revealed the truth which was coming through Jesus Christ, and that was the kind of truth that people needed then. 600, 700 years later, the Prophet Muhammad comes, a different part of the truth is revealed to a different society. Human beings are changing, human society is changing, so the bits of the truth which is sent are also changing as well, and they all have part of the truth. So you can't say that religion is wrong, but it's not totally correct either. Okay, they're all got part of the truth. Similarly, because of what we are, because we are imperfect, we all disagree, okay, and we come up with different interpretations. Like I said, Sibel and Erdem will interpret things differently. So all the religions have been interpreted and changed a little bit by people, okay? They come from God, but when they end up with us, we kind of come up with something, or we have different interpretations, different views, Catholics, Protestants, Sunni, Shia, and things. So already things are getting confusing. There's no absolute truth there in that sense as well. So we have part of the truth from the religions, and each one is suited to its own context, to the development of people at that time, okay? But they accept all these big religions, okay? There's a nice one here. Let me just have a look at in my book diagram. So, yes, for their prophets, and we'll come to these guys soon, Adam, Noah, and Abraham, and Moses, okay, the guys that we get from in Islam and Christianity and Judaism. Zoroaster. Anyone know who Zoroaster is? Who?
Very useful religious type in Iran.
Yeah, okay, or probably at that time more like Central Asia, a bit beyond Iran. But Zerdusht, do you know? Okay, Zoroaster is the kind of modern English founder. And Zoroastrianism was a very early sort of monotheistic religion which still exists in Iran, grew up probably in part of the Iranian world in Central Asia and so on. Maybe the historical source for a lot of the ideas of the other religions, that's something to be debated, but they accept him and his ideas in that context. Buddha, okay, we go east, we get Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, then the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Okay, so all these religions and ideas they accept as having part of the truth on this process and so on.
What do they think about Mormons?
Well, I don't know, actually. That's an interesting question. Obviously, when these ideas were being set up, Baha'u'llah obviously was living contemporaneously with the early Mormons, but he probably was not aware of what was going on over there in the US. It was not very well known in the world or something. So I have no way of knowing what they might say about these other religions. These are the big ones. They fit into the big frame, in a sense. It would be interesting to look on their website or somewhere to find out what they say about Sikhs or Rastafarians or Mormons and other more recent religions and things, whether they accept them or not. I don't know, actually.
Those guys actually think there will be new prophets.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. But yeah, so they can, I mean, they might say that, but they think the other ones are later. They think they're still at that phase. So they might reject those guys, I'm not sure. But that's a good question. A little bit of research for next time, maybe. So they believe in the relativity. All the religions are part of the truth. They are all unified and represent the truth, but they only represent part of it, relative truth, not absolute truth. So Christianity isn't the truth. Islam is not the truth. Okay, they've all got part of that truth. Okay, unity is also very important. They believe their big message is for the unity of human beings, human life, and things like that. And we'll come to that in a minute. Okay, what we call prophets, they will call manifestations of God. So all these religions in the past, they accept as having part of the truth. Each of these religions has got a prophet, as in our words, they would say a manifestation of God. What does the word manifestation mean? If you manifest something, that's perhaps a little bit too active. Can we think of declare? To manifest is a bit different. Almost there. A manifest, to manifest. Anyone? Maybe to show. Okay, göstermek or something. To manifest means to something which shows something else. Okay, reveals something else. So what we would call prophets, they are coming from God, they are aspects of God, they are showing some part of God. Okay, and in English they're called manifestations. I think that maybe the original Persian word is something which you will find in Shia Islam and so on, things like that. They are the messengers, the prophets of God for these previous religions, and they come to explain the particular truth, the relative truth at that time. Okay. And they are the founders of these religions. And here, of course, Jesus Christ, like in Islam, is a manifestation, not the Son of God, not God himself or whatever. And they have two aspects. They have two sides to their existence, okay? Firstly, they are like mirrors of God. They reveal, they show, or reflect God, okay? So they've got some connection to God. So things like God's love, God's justice, and so on, this is part of these guys, these manifestations, okay? But in addition, they are also human. They are part of their own life, part of their own time and context, and so on. So they're connected to God, but they're also human, okay? And what they say, what they teach, what they believe will change according to their personality and their own times and things like that. So they're linking up to God, but they're also part of the human world as well. They've got this kind of two-sided, dual personality or function and so on. And obviously, Baha'u'llah and the Bab shortly before him was a manifestation, was one of the prophets, and was the manifestation for their religion. And his message, his special message, is, as we said before, unity of humanity. What he's trying to teach, what he tried to teach, what the writings there is emphasizing especially, that we should come together, we should become unified, and so on. So they think there should be some kind of way that humans from different countries will all work together. We should have a world commonwealth, they say, okay, which we do have now. Of course, the United Nations is a kind of form of that, I suppose. They argue that there should be a universal language. There should be some language which dominates the world, which everyone can communicate in, so that we don't break away into separate groups. And English is becoming more and more that language, I suppose. We're moving in that direction. They argue for universal education. All children should have education, okay, which at the time was not the case, of course, but everyone should be educated in the same way. Well, it does seem, it's globalization, I suppose, in that sense. And as I said before, sexual equality as well. You know, again, in the past, in the 19th century Iran, okay, men and women did not have equal position. They argue, Baha'u'llah's writings, and now argue that men and women are equal. They should be treated equally in society. That's unifying the two main different elements of humanity as one, and so on. So some of these ideas, as I said, coming perhaps still here, influenced by, even in the 19th century, these Western and modernizing ideas, okay, the beginnings of feminism, of ideas of language and things like that that we can see today. But Baha'u'llah and his teaching as a manifestation, this unity, okay, as we said before, they accept that he is not the last, that this is not the end of the process. So their religion and their manifestation is not the last, just the latest, okay? And these teachings about sexual equality, about universal language, are just the teachings we need today, because that's the world we live in, okay? So they're suited to the current state of humanity. But in the future, there will be other, maybe 1,000 years later, when human society has changed again, God will send another manifestation, another prophet, with another set of teachings, with another part of the truth, and the process will continue, okay? And that's what we said last time or earlier on, is one of the things which makes this religion a bit different from others, because most religions say, we have the truth, it's absolute truth, more or less, though we wouldn't press it too far, but we have the best form of the truth, and our prophet is the last one, and so on. And that's the case in Christianity and Islam and others, up to a point that we wouldn't press it too far. But these people are far more relative. Okay, relative means not absolute, it means varying and so on. In that sense, this is part of that way of thinking. So, religious truth is not absolute. God sends manifestations. Baha'u'llah is a manifestation, but not the last one. The process will continue as human society changes, and we need a new set of ideas, a new way of looking at the world. And finally, let's look at a bit about their religious life, some of the things like we've mentioned for the other ones. Okay. Ideally, Baha'is can get together and worship in what is called a house of worship. However, there are not many houses of worship in the world. I'm not sure how many, but very, very few. So most Baha'is get together, they meet in someone else's home. They meet in their house, or they can rent a flat or a building somewhere, okay, and meet. So they don't, these kind of places are very rare, okay? They're special big places for show. But most Baha'is in the world will get together more locally and worship. They don't have a clear church building or whatever, the temple that they can go to. Their calendar is interesting. They've changed the way we look at the year. They say there are 19 months in the year, and each of those is 19 days long. Okay, so they break the year up into 19 months lasting 19 days. And obviously they have to do a bit.
Special about the number 19?
I'm not really sure where 19 comes from. There's a song by the Beatles, 19, but I don't think it's connected. It may have some religious significance. I'm not sure about that. We might be able to discover that, okay? And the first day of every month, so the first day of the 19 days, okay, is a special feast. They call the 19-day feast, okay? And that's a sort of special day for them. They'll meet together, they might pray and discuss things, they might eat together and things like that. So it's a bit like Jummah or Sunday. That's their special holy day, the beginning of each of these months. What we would call 21 March is the beginning of their year. So that's the first one, okay? That's the first 19 days. And obviously, therefore, the last 19 days is 20th of March. And again, this is influenced. We have, obviously, it's around about that time that Nevruz occurs in Iranian, Persian tradition and so on. And as we said the other time, this is the time of the beginning of spring. It's a traditional time for the start of the new year in many countries and things like that. They have a number of holy days. They have a number of special days. There are essentially 9 days in the year when they believe that they shouldn't have to work. Okay, we have the weekend concept now, and traditionally Sunday is the day of not working for Christians, of course. For them, no work on 9 days in the year. These are like the birth of the Bab and the birth of Baha'u'llah, the death of the Bab and things like that. Okay, they're connected. And also, you remember when Baha'u'llah announced himself to be the promised one, that's also a special time for them as well. So days connected to that process. Okay, and 9 of these where they think they don't work. And I don't know, Aaron will probably say, but wait a minute, what about this with his questions? But I have no idea what a Baha'i does if one of these 9 days doesn't occur at the weekend. And can a Baha'i call his boss in Istanbul or London or someone say, sorry, it's one of my holy days, I'm not coming in or something? I mean, it all depends on how you work it out and where you work, I suppose, and so on. At least with the concept of the weekend being common in most of the world, except for people who work in shops or whatever, most of us have a couple of days off or we can work voluntarily. So they may be a bit confusing there, I don't know. Okay, prayer, salat. Prayer is mainly kind of personal. There's no big ritual about how they pray, as far as I understand. Okay, it's fairly simple. There are 3 obligatory prayers. What does obligatory mean? Do you know what that word is? If something is obligatory, must, okay? Coming to this class every time is obligatory or something, you must do it. So they only have a fairly short little prayers, 3 of them, and these ones, they must choose one of those and say it during the course of the day at some point, quietly pray to themselves. I think generally when they pray, they have to face the tomb of Baha'u'llah in Acre, okay? So a bit like in Islam where there is a particular direction for praying, so it's kind of similar for them, but obviously it's not Mecca they're pointing at, it's the tomb of Baha'u'llah that they have to orientate themselves towards if they can, and so on. And in addition, they have a number of other extra prayers that they can do, but they're not obligatory. There's no fixed rules about those. Fasting, which is called something like Saum or Savm, depending on how you pronounce the word, okay. In the last month of the year, which is called Allah, and that runs from the 2nd of March to the 20th of March, okay. During that month, like in Ramadan, they are not supposed to eat food between the sun coming up and the sun going down. Okay, so clearly an influence of Islamic views here. but this is a fixed time in the year, okay, it doesn't move around, but the idea is still basically very similar. So that time they fast, they don't eat during that period of time. They also talk about pilgrimage as long as you have enough money, okay, and again, they take the Arabic words ultimately, which you have, of course, in Persian. Hajj, spelled slightly differently. Here, if you can go to the house of Baha'u'llah in Baghdad, not so easy these days, I don't suppose, or if you can go to the house of the Bab in Shiraz, except I think the Iranians smashed that house up or something in 1979 after the revolution. But traditionally, Hajj was for those two places. And then ziyarah, journey, in these cases to the tombs of Baha'u'llah or the Bab. Okay. Again, not so difficult for one, more difficult for the other. So again, if you have enough money, making this journey is very important for your kind of spiritual development and things like that, as long as you can manage this. And this is something which we see from other religions. Oh, I thought there was another thing there. All right, just lastly then, I was going to say, in addition, like in many religions, alcohol is not permitted to Baha'is, and they're not supposed to take hallucinogenic drugs and things like that. They are forbidden to do that. They probably have some other dietary things, I don't know the details of those. Okay, so that's the Baha'i religion. Any questions then? So you can see, I think, we've seen in a number of cases the similarities with Islam, okay, and particularly with Shia Islam in many more specific cases. But we can also see the influence of kind of Western modern liberal ideas coming in with things like equality and universality and things like that. So they see themselves as part of this process of modernizing and so on. A lot of the people who are Baha'is today do not come from Islamic countries. So they probably don't even realize that a lot of what they believe is a kind of form of Islam. Okay, they're living in Europe, America, or Africa, or somewhere far east. They accept these ideas, but they don't see that they are historically connected to Islamic ideas and so on. They see them as a separate thing. So you can see this religion either as a form of Islam, or now that it's more global in its perspective and in the world, as something a bit different, depending on how you look at it in that sense. Okay, we've got one last religion to look at, which we'll start looking at on Friday, which is the Rastafarian religion, a rather interesting set of ideas. What I'll do now is just give you back the work which you've given me so far, except I haven't got the midterms. So let's start with topic 1, essays. How would you describe this? What kind of text, what kind of book is this, in your opinion? Is it religious? Is it scientific? Is it science fiction? What do you think it is?
Well, it's kind of a mixture between religion and science fiction.
Right. What are the science fiction bits then?
God created this planet, and he waits for the the ideal conditions. Then he dispatch life to there, and he watches the creations evolve in time. So unlike the religion, it's a sports evolution, and I don't know. It's just.
Do you think it's true? Anyone think this is true? Anyone support this? Let's ask that question. Think, oh, that's quite sensible. Okay. It refers more than once to sons of God and the paradise sons. Now, what is that referring to? But how is it different? By the sons of God, where the universe is made. Okay. So read this, and it'll maybe take you about 15 minutes, something like that, I don't know. Read it slowly. Obviously, you can ask me if there are any words you don't understand, Then we'll have a discussion of it, and then we've got two questions here. To what extent can we describe the religious ideas in the Uranta book as monotheistic? And what is the relationship of the Uranta book to other world religions and to modern science? So one question is about the idea of one God. The other one is saying, have you heard some of these ideas before in other religions, ones we're reading about, or it could be your Islam or Christianity, and what's its connection to science rather than religion as well? Okay. So as you're reading it, think about those things. Please, any words you don't understand, okay, ask me and I'll put them on the board, because it probably means that other people won't understand them as well. Okay, so we'll make a start. We'll finish maybe in about 50 minutes, sometime after 11 o'clock, and then we'll have 10-15-minute discussion, and then we'll run over the break, but you've got time to write your answers and so on to this. Okay, fire away. Right, so what is this then? Uranta book, published 1955, maybe coming into existence through the strange revelations for a few decades earlier, or maybe composed by a number of people in and around Chicago during that time, more than likely the second option. And on those worlds where a paradise son has lived, a bestowal life, what is being referred to by this idea of there's more than one paradise son, do you think? Right. Can we be a bit more specific here? The concept of sons of God, plural, who otherwise is referred to as Son of God in other religions? Jesus Christ, okay. So the concept of God having a son, which as we've said in Christianity is not literal, but the phrase is there, seems to have an echo here, except we have sons of God. Why do we have more than one son? In Christianity, God comes to earth once as Jesus Christ. Here we have sons of God, and it says paradise sons, presumably referring to the same people. What's the reason for having more than one, do you think?
I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but I guess humans evolve, and right now we are not the final step of the final step of evolution, and
unknown book. We have a copy in the library, I think now, but a fairly unknown book called the Uranta book, or sometimes called the Uranta Papers. Now, no one's exactly sure where all this stuff came from. There's a lot of it, thick book. The story goes that in the I think it was kind of 20s or 30s in Chicago in the US, there was some guy who was sleeping very deeply, and his wife was concerned. She couldn't wake him up or something, and she got some psychologist or psychiatrist involved. And then he started sort of saying things as well at some point. And then later on, some texts appeared, and a group of people became involved. And finally, in 1955, these papers and texts ended up as this book. And I'm not sure, and I don't think anyone really knows exactly how it all came about, whether it was this sleeping man that kind of spoke these things, and then they got written down, or whether it was these psychologists, psychiatrists, and other people that kind of created it, and so on, which obviously seems more likely. I think they've analysed the text in terms of the vocabulary and the grammar, and they suggest that there's more than one author, and so on. But those people that believe this as a kind of religious holy book would say that it was a revelation, probably by this sleeping guy, and that it came ultimately from these kind of universal beings, angel type things in the sky or something like that. Okay, what we'll do today, in the first hour, because we have a longer text, so we need a bit more time, I think, is we will do the third and last of these text comprehension exercises, tests. You've done 2 before. I have the marked copies there. I will give them back to you at the end of today's class. This is the last one. So we'll follow the same procedure that we did last time. You will read the text, then we'll discuss it a little bit together, and then you will write short answers to these questions according to your ideas and hopefully the ideas that we've had in the discussion. This is a longer text, it's kind of a full page, so in order not to squash you up at the end, I thought we may as well do it now, and then obviously if we run over in time, if someone's still writing when break starts, then we can have a shorter second class. So a few words before you begin. This is a fairly